Welcome back to Series 5, Episode 4 of GEM in the Real World. Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a really fascinating question. Why do bodies actually fail to recover? We're focusing closely on stress, sleep, and what we call the geometry of repair. You see, we're going to look at the human body not just as some static object, but as a dynamic, living system that is constantly negotiating its own persistence.
Think about the illusion of stability for a second. The body doesn't just fail the very first day it feels tired. It doesn't break the first time you're stressed, or the first time you miss a few hours of sleep. For a really long time, your body can compensate. It keeps going, keeps meeting expectations. From the outside, everything might look perfectly fine. But inside, these invisible stress lines are adding up, and your internal recovery curve is fundamentally changing shape.
And that brings us to our core thesis for today. The body does not fail when it feels tired. It fails when recovery can no longer catch up with disturbance. Just let the gravity of that sink in. It's a massive shift in how we actually view our biological limits.
Section 1. A careful frame. Let's start with a systems audit.
Now we really need to draw a clear line here. We are comparing medical advice to a systems audit. We aren't dealing with clinical diagnoses, labels, or magical cures today. In this explainer, we're strictly focusing on analyzing systemic load, observing how a system returns to its baseline, and tracking recovery. This is essentially the pure engineering reality of how a biological system handles pressure. So, just to be absolutely clear right out of the gate, this is not a cure claim. It is purely a recovery question. We're asking a structural question about persistence, really examining how a living system manages to just keep recovering day after day.
Moving on to Section 2. The mechanics of active repair.
Every single day, your body absorbs a massive ledger of systemic disturbances. We're talking physical strain, mental load, emotional pressure, the impact of your environment, and sleep disruption. And look, these aren't inherently bad things. Objectively speaking, they're simply inputs of disturbance that your biological system has to absorb and process.
But here's where we really need to dismantle a common myth. Recovery is work. It is absolutely not just doing nothing. It's a highly active, totally necessary physiological process. It means restoring biological gradients, repairing tissue, regulating your energy, and deliberately bringing the nervous system back down to its calm baseline. It's a real biological project, and it requires dedicated time and resources.
Which leads us to this crucial point. Recovery is not the absence of activity. It is the activity that makes the next disturbance survivable. True resilience isn't just about gritting your teeth and enduring heavy stress. It's forged entirely in that active, biological return to baseline.
Let's actually walk through the mechanics of this cycle. Step 1, a disturbance arrives. Simple enough. Step 2, your body mounts a biological response. And then Step 3, active recovery steps in to negotiate a return to the baseline before the next disturbance hits. For your system to stay stable over time, this entire cycle absolutely has to reach completion.
Because, as the saying goes, the problem is not disturbance. The problem is disturbance without completion. Honestly, challenge and pressure are great. They actually drive adaptation. But when we don't complete the cycle, when disturbances just keep hitting before our recovery is finished, well, that's when we start causing invisible, systemic damage.
This leads us right into Section 3, the trap of recovery debt.
I want you to picture a physiological ledger. On one side, you got your inputs, stress, workload, and inflammation. And on the other side, your outputs, sleep, active repair, and adaptation. When those inputs, the disturbances, arrive faster than your restoration can actually process them, the ledger stops balancing. The math, quite simply, stops working.
Clinically, we define this state as recovery debt. Basically, it's disturbance the system has absorbed but hasn't fully resolved yet. How does that look in everyday life? It shows up as persistent fatigue, irritability, taking way longer to recover, and suddenly having a reduced tolerance for workloads that used to feel completely effortless. Think of it like this. Recovery debt is what remains when the body keeps paying yesterday's bill with tomorrow's capacity. It's a really perilous economic strategy for your body. You are literally borrowing from your own future resilience just to fund your baseline output today.
And the wild part is, we often see this masked as a virtue. False efficiency mistakes overextension for actual productivity. Our modern burnout culture practically demands more output with less sleep and less recovery. But listen, those short-term output gains, they are not free. They export a massive, completely invisible cost directly into your future capacity. To put it bluntly, efficiency that destroys recovery is not efficiency. It is deferred collapse. That's the inevitable failure point for any chronically overdrawn system. You just can't trick biology forever. Eventually, the bill comes due.
Section 4. The scale-free survival question.
Now take a look at this scale-free bridge. It is honestly awe-inspiring. We're comparing biological systems like our cells and our nervous system with macro systems. Think massive institutions or power grids. Even though they operate with totally different physics, they share the exact same fundamental metric. Can recovery catch up? Whether it's the microscopic fatigue of a single cell or the collapse of an entire infrastructure grid, it all follows the very same underlying law of persistence.
So how do we actually apply this to our own lives? Well, try asking yourself these 4 core questions. What stress is currently being stored? What recovery is being delayed? What cost is being exported? And what collapse is already being paid for invisibly? Walking through those questions gives you an incredibly powerful systems audit of your daily life.
Remember, a body is not resilient because it never bends. It is resilient because it can return. Survival isn't about staying perfectly rigid and unmoving. It completely depends on having the capacity and the actual time allotted for that journey back to baseline. And that is the grand unifying theory of our analysis today. From cells to civilizations, survival depends on recovery catching disturbance before collapse catches the system. When you really think about it, the sheer scale and truth of that principle is staggering.
To sum up our explainer today, your body is a living recovery system. It literally has to pay for its persistence. GEM gives us a brilliantly simple systems question to help identify our own restoration pathways. What recovery route has been lost?
I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat haunting thought to reflect on. Are you tired because you worked hard, or are you tired because your recovery route is no longer catching up? Take a quiet moment and really sit with that question. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helps you look at your own biological ledger a little differently.